Hi, everyone. This is Cindy Liu with CHRO Partners. I'm joined by Asia Howell, and we're both, I think, in the Dallas, Texas area today. Um, you've got a great view there, Asia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about systems for succession, not surprise. And I think one of the most powerful things that CHROs can do is get that next generation of leaders ready for the C suite. And Asia's got a decade or more of experience really helping with talent management and helping grow executives. And so we don't have a ton of time today, but I'm going to try to pull as much knowledge out of you as possible. Before we get started, if you're joining us live today, put in the chat where you're viewing from. We'd love to hear from you. We can't actually see who's on unless you say hello. So say hello. And Asia, tell us a little bit about yourself and why this is such an important topic to you.
Sure. So I started out in consulting, actually. I worked for a small boutique consulting firm. And the first time that I encountered anything related to succession planning was when people were getting ready to exit their role and they asked, can you help with the transition plan? And to be honest, way back then, I didn't really understand all that that would entail. But
Mhm.
after 10 years of consulting and then moving from a few different companies, it became the thing that I love to do. And I think it's my probably greatest passion is helping people get ready and helping them assess talent and just work on developing themselves and creating healthy companies.
Or I wish I would have had you when I stepped into the CEO role. It was scary and lonely, and sometimes you don't have board members that are necessarily people who can help you,
Yeah,
right? Uh,
it is really helpful, I think, to have a partner that you can trust, whether that's in the HR space or talent development or whatever role they play, to be
mhm.
able to have real conversations about talent and not to make it gossipy or to make it about someone, but really with the intention of developing people.
Yeah. So often we put together these big binders. I don't know if people do binders anymore, but of succession plans and talent management programs, and then it kind of sits on the shelf. Why does that happen? And what are the systems that need to be in place in order for it actually to work?
That's funny. I was just cleaning out a bunch of those binders. So from the prior years, it's like 3 years old. I think it's time to go. We are not using binders anymore, at least where I am. So I think it's really important to align around talent. If you want to define who you are as a company, what you're trying to achieve, and what results you want to deliver, it's important that you know what you're looking for in your talent and that you have a way to assess them and that you
Mhm.
can align together on what that talent looks like. It's important that you keep the process dynamic and agile and that it doesn't become something that's stale. That most companies do, larger companies will have an annual process where they'll calibrate, they'll do a 9 box or some kind of
Mhm.
system or process to identify and place talent. Usually, if they're really good at it, they'll create a development plan, but the person that they're talking about isn't in the room, right? So you need to translate that development plan to that person who's getting the development plan. The
Mhm.
person that receives the development plan needs to be bought into the development plan. So needs to know why they have a development plan, what the process is for that plan, and then how they bring that plan to life. And then after you work on the development plan, it's important that it stays alive and that the company has resources and tools and solutions that actually mirror and map the plans that you put in place. So it is sometimes can feel like a big comprehensive system if you do it
Mhm.
well, but
Mhm.
it can also be pretty seamless if you're really intentional.
Yeah. Um, so you talked about alignment. How do you get all the executives aligned on these conversations? And first of all, bigger picture that we need to do this at all, right? And then I'll
Yeah.
ask you more questions around the like competencies.
Yeah. Well, I actually was going to say starting with
Oh,
competencies.
okay. Okay.
So knowing what you're looking for and then having a shared definition and then being able to describe behaviorally what that looks like. It's not always just competencies. You need to have a track record of success and know that somebody has the experience, and you need to define what is your criteria for the C-suite. What do
Hmm.
you really need and what are you looking for? And not just the C-suite, all levels of talent. You need to be able
Hmm.
to clearly define. I
Sure.
think the hardest ones are usually managers jumping up to directors, actually, because that's a big jump in a lot of companies for scope and for scale.
Hmm.
But having agreement on what that looks like, and then being able to have conversations when you disagree about the talent and to be able to explore if someone doesn't have enough visibility or enough credibility or some strained relationships, maybe they show up really well over here, but not so well over there.
Right.
How to navigate that so that you can create a shared sense of what the talent is bringing and what you want from them.
Yeah. Okay, so I got to ask this elusive topic of executive presence.
Yeah.
Like I remember at one point when I was stepping to the C-suite, the chairman said to me, "You need to have better executive presence." I'm like, "What does that mean exactly?" I'm going to give you a minute to think about that while I say hello to some folks in the
Okay.
chat. Hey, Eric from Denver, good to see you. There's somebody from Dallas, but I can't tell who that is. Peyton from Dallas as well, good to see you. Addison, Texas in the room. Hey there, Aiden, good to see you guys. All right, so executive presence, like, okay, you might have one definition. I've got a different one. Eric's got a third one. Like, how do you get that alignment of what that actually is?
It's like the age-old question. I think there's a million different presentations and examples, and people have all these different definitions. When someone stands up, do they have the confidence and do they have the competence to direct and lead? Are they delivering information in a clear, compelling way that you're hearing them? And do they have a vision, or are they able to tell a story that can hook you in? Cindy, you and I've talked about this before, but it's so hard to get anyone's attention now. And people are so strained and so pulled in different directions. So I think being really engaging, but connecting, and it's not about you ever. It's never about you. It's about them, and then knowing how to connect to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, was that definition from one of your past companies or like?
No, that's a combination of all
of all of them. Okay. But let's say you have three executives in the room. Let's say the CEO, CFO, and I don't know, COO, and they're all like, well, they all define it differently. How do you get those three strong personalities to say, this is what it means at our company in order to be in the C-suite?
That's where the competencies come into play, where you have to have clear definitions and clear understandings. And I like to behavioralize things. So it's not just enough to say we want executive presence, but let's define what those 4 or 5 key behaviors are at our company.
Okay.
Here at Guidestone, where I work, it's about being, compelling. It's about storytelling. We have like certain key criteria that we'd be looking for in presentations, because we're working on it right now as we are developing our competencies. So you have to be clear about what those specific things are.
Okay.
And then assess. So, we're working on building a company where there's feedback, but being able to talk about it so you're not surprised the first time you hear you don't have executive presence. A big part of getting people ready is not just their ability to give and receive feedback, but the company culture to reinforce and support. And sometimes you're going to get conflicting opinions on talent. I may experience someone differently, Cindy, than you do, and they might resonate with me differently. But to be able to have the healthy conversations about the why, and then to be able to behavioralize, well, do they meet the mark from what we're looking for?
Right.
Yeah.
Let's actually jump into one of the topics that you and I spoke about, which is learning and development, right? It's a big topic right now. Like, everybody's talking about how do we reinvent learning and development, especially in the age of AI. But I'm sure there's some long-term things that you've learned in your decade or so of working in L&D. What's your best advice on how to get people's attention right now?
Well, it is so hard to get people's attention right now. I think people are so stretched and strained, and they're working on so many different things. Even to get them to focus on just their development is hard. So over time, I think the strategies have changed. It used to be you would go to a classroom in a day or 2 days or 3 days. I don't think anybody has tolerance for 3-day learnings and, removing themselves from the environment. The most important thing that I've seen work most effectively more recently has been making it very relevant and tied to the job and the day-to-day life and experience. So integrating learning and development and what you're trying to reinforce behaviorally into the systems that exist at the company. So for us, that's our all-company communication. It's our leadership news. It's the senior leadership team meetings that happen, and embedding the building of the competency in those spaces that already exist. And it's really hard because it takes so much more intentionality. You can't design a day or a program or system. You have to design a whole campaign, a whole communication plan, a whole strategy around, let's say we're working on executive presence. Then you need it embedded at different levels. But if you want it sticky, and you really want people to embrace it, you've got to reinforce it and support it and design it and be very clear about what it looks like and how to build it.
Right, right. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it pays off.
Yeah, better a lot of work and then people actually engage or actually have a result versus like worst case, you've all these learning tools and they just sit there and people are not using them.
What's the most exciting about getting people ready and developing is when something does catch on, like let's say a buzz term, every company, as long as you're defining the buzz term, so like growth mindset, right?
Right.
And if everybody starts to say, well, what does that mean to you? Or what does that mean to you? Or and then you tell a story or an example of someone having growth mindset and how it showed up. And then you emulate somebody, or you say, oh, and like Tim did when he was showing a growth mindset when he did such and such. So that's when things are alive.
Yeah. Hey, in the audience, you guys, what's your favorite buzzword around competencies? Drop one in the chat for me. Well, speaking of that, I know you have some slides that you want to share with us. I thought there's some really tangible things that the audience could take away from these slides. So I'm going to flip over to another channel.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a yes if you guys can see our slides. And
I can see them.
Okay, that's what's important. All right, so give us a little background around how you came up with this transformative leadership. I know it's not new.
I was thinking about our conversation today, and I was thinking about the different companies that I've been at and what is really the distinguishing factor for the C-suite. What really makes a difference in someone? Why would you select them over someone else? What makes them ready? And I was thinking about how things are changing quickly with AI and other tools, and just the amount of rapid change that's happening, that you really need people that can have more transformative leadership. And so some of the slides I just put together, what I think some of those qualities are, what you need to look at, and then how you actually implement and work on transformative leadership.
Okay, where were you 20 years ago for me? All right, here we go. I'm going to advance the slide.
Sure. So I think being clear about what transformation is, and when you're looking at someone in the C-suite, they should ideally be somebody that can define the current state, the maturation needed to get to the future state. So if you're at point A and you want to be at point Z, you need to be able to have a compelling way to communicate that to people and to be able to be clear. But anything that's truly transformational does not look like it is today. So if you're doing something that is, enhancing or developing or building upon something, it's probably not transformational. It's transformational when it looks different, which means you have different mindsets and behaviors. The way we think, the way we behave is actually different than the way that it is today. And then you need to build organizational momentum and know how to capitalize on the pacing and sequencing to get the transformation, across.
Right.
And then followership. I mean, you're not really in the C-suite if you don't have followership, or you're not doing a good job in the C-suite if you don't have people that can grasp the vision, see the transformation you're trying to create. And you may not call it a transformation, right? You might just say the new whatever we're doing, but to move people.
Can we go back and talk a little bit about the shifting behaviors and mindset?
Sure.
Right. That's a huge challenge, right? Like I see way too many people who present who are just like, this is how we do it, or this is the strategy, but there's no, trying to reach the hearts, just the minds. What are some competencies that would tie into somebody who can do that?
So actually on the next slide, I think the most important thing is influence.
Okay, hold on.
And these are like my own ideas and competencies, right? These are not like our company competencies, but I think that they resonate with all C-suite leaders that you need. You need to be able to be transformative, have transformation, but the way to achieve that is through the power of influence. And to be able to be ready at the C-suite level, you need to have a few fundamental things. What I put on this slide was basically, you have to be able to clearly define the problem, what you're trying to solve, what you're trying to achieve, your position on it. You need to have a voice and an opinion in a position. And then you need to be able to communicate the solution in a way that people can digest and understand. So just the clarity. When I look at executives that have failed either getting to the C-suite or in the C-suite, or my own personal failures, it's because I haven't been clear enough on what I'm doing or why I'm doing it or what's driving the change. And then personally and authentically connecting. If I'm doing something because Asia wants to do it or my boss wants to do that, and it's not for the greater good of the company or for something that's really going to drive our people can see through that. People know. And so I think it goes without saying that almost everybody has authentic communication as one of their competencies now. But really, people know when you're able to do that or not. And you have to be, to some degree, likable. You have to be able and willing to have conversations with people where they want to do what you're asking or where you're moving toward. And it's got to be, you got to have the with them, what's in it for them, right?
Yeah. It's interesting you say the likable. Like, I used to have a CEO who said, we shouldn't hire anybody unless you feel like you can fly to Australia and back with the person. Like, if they don't drive you crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how to interview for that, but
you don't have to like somebody to trust them. So you don't have to like somebody for them to be dependable or for you to know that you can count on them.
Right.
But it really helps if you like them, if you're working together closely and you need to move things and get things done. And one of the things that contributes to likability is actually just proximity. So the more time you spend with somebody, so it's really hard in the hybrid and remote environments that we're in, but the more you see someone, the more likability tends to emerge. Not always.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, right now I'm not sure my teenage daughter who's home from college is feeling that way about me. What else? What other things are in the likability category? That's interesting.
That's just based on some research and looking at trust. One of our competencies has been instilling trust. And so how do you build trust? So we've been looking at behavioralizing trust behaviors. So dependability matters, but also trust. Again, it's not about likability. So it's just one of the things I learned along the way.
We used to say that too, to the sales, like this is way before Zoom was even an option, right? And we'd say the only way you can build trust with clients or prospects is to be eyeball to eyeball, right? You just have to have time. And, so when that big project comes along, you're the person that they call. But you're right. That is a challenge. And I think why so many senior executives are like, we need people back in the office. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. Next topic, another time. We're working on that too.
Right. Okay. So compelling communications.
We're currently at our company right now, we're working on storytelling and the power of telling a story and rooting things in something tangible. It's, as we talked about earlier, so hard to get attention, so hard to capture people. We had a meeting, and not that any other company would have this, but where it's literally, you have to almost say like, okay, laptop's closed, everyone look up, phones away, to just get people's attention. So, and it's hard. People can only do that for so long. So you got to be very compelling and engaging and capture their attention. And then that's all about what's in it for them though, again. So we're working on our communication needs to meet the needs of the audience. It's not about the needs of the presenter. It's not about the executive having some great idea or grandstanding, but it's really, again, connecting, meeting them where they are.
Yeah, for sure. What's in it for them is what gets their attention.
Yeah.
Right. And so be able to say, here's what I see happening with you, or really understanding what they're going through. And so that's many, many messages in an organization. It might look one thing for the salespeople. It might look like a whole different thing for accounting. So it's
appealing to different audiences, and knowing your audience and spending time actually, ideally the people that you're promoting to the C-suite get that.
Right. Like AI, I think at some point is going to be so amazing for that, right? Like it could be like, I know it's month end close, but and we understand that you're already working to midnight trying to get the books closed, but here's something. Just even be able to empathize with them, and if AI can help us tailor those messages.
There's endless possibilities.
Right? All right, so exciting.
I know you and I are both excited about AI.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about at the end opportunity for CHRs to learn more. So change catalyst. Tell me a little bit about that piece.
I mean, a lot of people have some change. It can be a buzzword, right? Change management. And what does that mean? And being able to drive change, or it's on everything, drive change, facilitate change, but I think that really understanding the core principles it ties all together, but being able to have a burning platform of rationale, a reason why, clearly communicate, reinforce it. So, and it's not just enough for the C-suite leader to do that on their own, but they have to build the talent to be also doing that. One person by themselves is not enough. You have to have champions and catalysts and people behind driving and moving the change that are all bought in and invested. So I think it's a critical skill. And I put this all under influence, because how do you drive and get things done?
Right.
How are you moving things?
Well, and these days, I think back in the old days, it was like you could have a hierarchical setting. The CEO said, do it, you did it. But I think with the newer generations, it's like,
not so much.
yeah, just because you got the title doesn't mean I'm going to listen to you.
Yeah.
Because that's how our parents taught us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about transformative, the organizational transformation categories, power of influence. Now let's talk a little bit about delivering.
This is a really heavy slide. There's a lot on it, but it was basically when you think about transformational leadership and how someone can create that, what are you looking for in the qualities or the people that are bringing that forward? And so
Okay.
I think, as someone who's changed industries and moved in different settings and worked with a lot of different organizations, there's a level, and even when you're like in a new role, so whether it's a director role or a C-suite role or any new role that you take on, you have to pause and just appreciate what is this and how it got there. And whether or not you agree with the process, there's like an honor that you have to give and do to how the team or the system or the structure got to the place that they are today. And you obviously are leading or joining the team, so you should be invested and participate and be on board, hopefully, with that, right? So you're looking for someone that can appreciate with true gratitude and genuine appreciation where they are, but then can articulate where you're going, right? So this is sort of a process to build for someone that's going to go into the C-suite or any role to help drive high impact. So that's one of the things I think that consistently shows up at every company I've been at, is they want someone that, here we call it drive impact. Somewhere else you might call it transformative change or change, or, lead with authority, whatever the title is. You're really looking for someone that can deliver.
Yeah.
And how do you deliver? So
I love the acronym.
Yeah, I just ABCD.
Yeah.
So appreciate, participate, be curious, engage, cultivate readiness within the organization, and then driving transformation. In the appreciation phase, sometimes, and this is true for anyone in a new role, but you need to just start doing the work. And that might not always be the work that someone may say, this is what we need, and you may know that that's not what they need. But to build trust and credibility and to have a track record of success, which is required to be able to be, influence in those ways, you've got to do sometimes the things that they ask and show them that you're in it, that you support them. And then you can start to be curious and ask questions, capture your own insights, test those assumptions, and see, are you really understanding and resonating? Are you, getting enough of I put in here culture, structure, relationships, dynamics. How does the company win? You have to understand that. And as a CHRO, I think this is a criteria that I would have for anyone as my successor, or anyone, that would be looking at creating organizational change at our C-suite. I would hope that this would be, some of the foundations of that.
Yeah, I love that. A friend of mine who used to be a CHRO used to have the saying, give them what they want and then give them what they need.
Yes, that's exactly it. You've got to start somewhere. And if you give them something they don't want and they don't know that they need it, it's not compelling in any way. It doesn't. But I think that once you have some trust, you can start to deliver some insights, have some courage, communicate what you're hearing and seeing. But then you have to have some way of prioritizing that, because everybody wants to do everything right now. And you have to be able to clearly say, why are we going to solve this problem first? But do you have an appetite? Because I might see a problem, or anyone might see a problem. And if you don't have the appetite or the readiness or the willingness, or if it's not a big enough either rationale or reason, you're not going to have transformative change.
Yeah. Under critical reminders, you have never crossed the power line. What does that mean? Was that a play on your old company?
No, I do come from utilities, but no. It's actually something an old boss used to say to me, and she was brilliant. And she always said that in order to facilitate change, You need to know the boundaries of your authority. You need to speak with courage and communicate what you see. But there is a delicate space that can't be touched or crossed. You don't jump over your boss. You don't go to your trustees. You have to know how to get things done effectively. And anyone in the C-suite hopefully can navigate the power dynamics, the politics, the relationships, and understand a lot of the sensitivities. And when is the right way and time to challenge? And each company's culture is different. But how and when is the appropriate way to challenge authority or influence authority without crossing the line? Because then you're not welcome in the system anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We should learn how to do that in our condo association. The board.
Not in neighborhood associations.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So let me ask you this. Any, I guess, last minute, like one last piece of advice when it comes to helping support executives to get into the C-suite? What's one thing maybe?
We didn't really spend much time talking about how common it is to disagree about talent. You know, and I think that you had asked me in the past, what are surprises that I've had in leading talent management? And I think I said to you, one of the things that I'm not surprised about is how much alignment is required, and how I might say transformational leadership is the most important thing to me, and you may see that very differently. We may see different ways to get things done. So those behaviors become important anchors for you to describe what you're looking for, but we may experience it differently. And so oftentimes when you're looking at C-suite, you need acceptance from the rest of the team, and you need people to have shared agreement on talent, but you might have very different views. So I'm just surprised at how much time we continue to spend on talking about talent, what talent looks like, defining again, and then coming to agreement. And it helps when you build tools or create assessments, but it doesn't always resolve all the conflict. You sometimes just have to get in there and talk about it.
Yeah, but I can see that process being so much faster than it used to be with AI, right? Yes. Like you could build a custom GPT, build a custom GPT where,
right.
Let's say you take all the conversations, you do them all on Zoom or Teams, you take the transcripts, you feed them into the GPT, and then out comes at least, maybe at 70% or 80% of the way there. Right. And then you can spend your time really eyeball to eyeball tweaking it, right?
Yes. And you can just, you used to have to create, if you weren't buying something off the shelf, you used to have like a Korn Ferry or a Development Dimensions International. So if you weren't buying some model, there's 100 competency models. If you weren't buying something, but now AI can take the best of what you put in there and start to generate. So we use Copilot, but we've been able to use AI to create a lot of our work around competencies.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
You can't just take it as it is. You've got to read it, and you got to say, hey, do these behaviors really resonate? Is this really what you want?
Right.
But the work is so much easier. Yeah. It's amazing.
We've got our big CHRO event coming up this fall in September. And what's your past experience, Asia, with these events that we have? And how do you feel walking in, and how do you feel coming out?
I'm going to miss this one, and I'm devastated. I thought about moving our family vacation and cruise, but I can't.
No, don't do that.
17 people going. But so in my place, I'm actually someone who's a director on our team is going to help learn and get all the insights from me. And my boss may attend. I'm trying to get as many people to get the information for me. I'm really excited they're going to focus on AI. And I love the company and the shared learnings of just communicating with everybody there and just helping each other. Like, is that a good vendor? Is this a good tool? Is that a good process? What are you doing? It's really,
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Asia. Really appreciate you joining us today. So much to cover in a quick half an hour. If you guys are interested, we'll drop Asia's LinkedIn profile, and so you can connect with her and show your appreciation. If you're online right now and you have anything that you'd like to say to Asia, feel free to drop that in the chat. And we'll see you guys next time for CHRO Chats Live. All right.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thanks, Asia.
Yeah.